I heard the faint sound of footsteps outside the door. It was Michael returning. I ran over joyfully, holding a cake in my hands, smiling as I spoke the moment he opened the door.
Happy birthday, honey.
Michael saw me beaming with joy, but remained silent.
Michael, I don't want a divorce. I know she's back. As long as you don't divorce me, I can pretend I didn't see anything. I won't bother Emily, and she can even stay here.
I could clearly see Michael's eyes turn cold and harsh as I said this. Then, his expression turned indifferent and hostile. My heart sank. Michael averted his gaze, ignoring the cake in my hands. He walked away, unbuttoning his collar as he headed upstairs.
Michael, do you really have to force me to divorce you? I've already compromised. Why do you still want this? Do you remember what you said when we got married?
Michael stopped and turned around as I had hoped. His silhouette against the light made him even more captivating. My eyes softened. This was the man I had loved for 12 years, married for 5. My love had only brought his disdain, his indifference, and my own scars.
Sarah, stop pretending. It makes me sick.
My words made him sick, huh? I put down the cake, choosing to ignore his words. I picked up a fake knife from the coffee table and bit my lip.
Michael, I spent a long time making this cake. Please try it. I know you don't like sweets, so I didn't add much sugar.
She's gone! Are you satisfied now? From now on, you don't need to try so hard to please me. I will never like you. This marriage will end. And those who hurt her will be punished.
The sound of a door slamming echoed as he went into the room. I sat on the sofa, unmoving, slowly eating the cake. Tears streamed down my face as I bit my lip. I must not cry. Suddenly, the phone rang. It was my sister, Linda, crying on the other end.
Sarah, our brother's condition has worsened. He's been rushed to the emergency room.
I hurried over, only to learn from Linda that my brother had watched a video, triggering his heart condition. I suddenly remembered Michael's words. Years ago, my brother was involved in bullying Emily. Although he didn't physically harm her, he was one of the masterminds. This time, my brother's heart attack was undoubtedly related to Michael and the video of Emily being mistreated.
Sarah, our brother will be okay, right? He will get better, right?
Linda, Emily is gone. Do you think our brother has any chance?
No. Sarah, isn't he your husband? Beg him to spare our brother.
I stared blankly at the emergency room, silent. I didn't know how to respond, but I knew it was useless. For Michael, ending someone's life was as easy as lifting a finger.
Sarah, we wronged you back then. But James is still your brother. You can't just let him go. Our parents are gone. The only one left in the family is James. No matter how wrong he was, you can take the punishment for him.
All right, I'll try. If it doesn't work, there's nothing I can do.
Okay.
She paced back and forth at the emergency room door, wringing her hands. I took out my phone and mustered the courage to call. The phone rang for a long time. I called several times, but no one answered. Feeling hopeless, I returned to Linda and told her the news. She was devastated, and soon after, the emergency room announced that my brother hadn't made it. Linda fainted on the spot, and I wasn't much better off, my limbs numb and cold, devoid of any sensation. I stared blankly at the emergency room, silent. I didn't know how to respond, but I knew it was useless. For Michael, ending someone's life was as easy as lifting a finger.
Sarah, we wronged you back then. But James is still your brother. You can't just let him go. Our parents are gone. The only one left in the family is James. No matter how wrong he was, you can take the punishment for him.
My heart turned cold, and I sighed.
All right, I'll try. If it doesn't work, there's nothing I can do.
Okay.
She paced back and forth at the emergency room door, wringing her hands. I took out my phone and mustered the courage to call. The phone rang for a long time. I called several times, but no one answered. Feeling hopeless, I returned to Linda and told her the news.
No. This can't be happening.
Soon after, the emergency room announced that my brother hadn't made it. Linda fainted on the spot, and I wasn't much better off, my limbs numb and cold, devoid of any sensation. At that moment, the phone rang, filling me with a strong sense of unease.
Hello?
Is this Miss Sarah?
Yes.
This is the hospital. Alice has had a heart attack and has been admitted to the emergency room.
The phone slipped from my fingers, hitting the ground with a loud thud, drowning out the doctor's voice. By the time I reached the hospital, my sister was already gone. My mind went blank. Bang.
Aya.
My body collapsed to the floor, knees buckling, hands clutching my head as my anguished cries echoed through the bright hallway.
Sarah.
I froze at the familiar voice, looking up with swollen eyes. A hand with distinct knuckles reached out to wipe away my tears. Despite the beauty of the hand, it was marred by a scar I had inflicted years ago when I refused to leave with Michael.
John.
John, with his clean-cut hair and striking features, smiled in a way that sent chills down my spine.
Sarah, I'm here to settle a score for this hand, he joked.
In a daze, I was transported back 5 years when John had said the same thing.
Sarah, I skipped class for you.
If I hadn't met Michael first, hadn't loved him so deeply, perhaps John would have been the perfect partner. John came from a good family and loved me, but I couldn't abandon the struggling Michael, couldn't bear to see him desperately borrowing money with bloodshot eyes. The once arrogant boy had swallowed his pride.
I'm married.
John seemed to ponder this.
You rely on Michael, but I heard he's the one who targeted your family, withdrawing investments to find those who wronged Emily. He even wants to honor her as the lady of the house.
I averted my gaze, unwilling to respond. I pushed John away and tried to leave, but dizziness overcame me, and I lost consciousness. At the Michael family villa, Michael hurriedly approached, just in time to see John carrying me out of the car.
Still not giving up, John?
John glanced at the unconscious me, unafraid of Michael's harsh demeanor.
Yes, I've been thinking about her for 8 years.
8 years, truly devoted. Why not take her home instead of bringing her back?
Michael, don't regret this.
What do you think she means to me?
He walked past John and got into the waiting car.
Stop pretending. He's gone.
Hearing this, I slowly opened my eyes and got out of his arms, silent. John suddenly grabbed my shoulders, leaning down seriously.
Sarah, come with me.
I pushed his hand away and walked into the villa without a word.
Whatever, it's none of my business.
I replied coldly, quickly entering the villa. My heart was in turmoil, clearly affected by John's words. John watched Sarah's lonely figure, feeling a sudden unease, as if something significant was about to happen. On the ship, several people were tied to thick wooden poles, their heads covered with black plastic. Their mouths were gagged with cloth, unable to speak, only able to make muffled sounds. A shadow loomed over them, and suddenly, their blurred vision was filled with light, causing them to squint. When they saw who it was, they were so terrified they couldn't even make a sound.
Take the cloth out of their mouths.
Yes, sir.
The bodyguard quickly walked over and removed the cloth from their mouths, then returned to stand properly in front of Michael. Michael toyed with the knife in his hand, looking indifferent.
Will you speak, or do I have to make you? You know my influence in this city. The end of insignificant people won't cause any waves.
Michael, we don't know anything. What do you want us to say? My dad is the chief.
Who was the mastermind behind bothering Emily back then?
There was no mastermind. Yes, there was no mastermind. She brought it on herself by provoking us.
Michael's hawk-like eyes showed a cold smile, and he waved his hand. The bodyguard understood immediately.
Lower them, quickly and precisely.
The 4 people on the wooden poles were submerged in darkness for a long time. Finally, the bodyguard signaled to raise them back up. The 4, now soaking wet, looked utterly miserable and no longer dared to act tough.
Electric shock.
The 4 turned pale with fear. Michael was practically a madman.
I'll talk, I'll tell you everything.
He had elderly parents and young children at home, and his wife was waiting for him. He couldn't afford to be harmed. Michael felt very pleased and nodded in satisfaction.
It was the Sarah family. Sarah's second daughter, Sarah, told us to do it. She said if we bothered Emily, she'd give each of us a villa and 10,000 in cash. That's more than I could earn in a lifetime, so I agreed.
Yes, you and Sarah were the stars at school, and a model couple. Seeing you care so much about a transfer student made her jealous. She didn't want a transfer student to ruin your years-long relationship.
Sarah told us to lie to you, saying we were just helping Emily with her studies, but in reality we were bothering her. Plus, Sarah's younger brother also liked Emily, so it all fell into place.
Sarah threatened my dad's project. If I didn't agree, she'd bankrupt my family. I had no choice.
Mr. Michael, we've told you everything. Please let us go. Sarah forced us, we had no choice.
Let you go? Fine. Just repay Emily for what you did to her back then. If you can do that, I'll ensure your careers flourish and pretend this never happened.
With that, he stood up and left. The 4 captives looked at each other, understanding the meaning in each other's eyes. The emergency room's harsh fluorescent lights flickered, casting an eerie glow. Sarah stood there, her face blank, unable to process the events unfolding before her.
Sarah, please. We made mistakes, but James is your brother. You can't let him suffer alone. Our parents are gone. He's all we have left. Please, help him.
I'll try, Linda. But if it doesn't work...
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you.
Linda's tears flowed as she paced nervously outside the emergency room. Sarah, mustering her courage, pulled out her phone to make a call. The phone rang endlessly, each unanswered call amplifying her despair. After several attempts, she returned to Linda, defeated.
Linda, no one answered. I'm sorry.
Linda's wails echoed through the hallway as the emergency room doors opened, the doctor delivering the inevitable news. James hadn't made it. Linda collapsed, and Sarah felt her world grow cold and numb. After breakfast, I handled my sister's affairs. Soon it was afternoon. I opened the wardrobe and looked at the clothes for all seasons, most of which were untouched. I couldn't help but laugh at myself.
What was once luxurious now seems so desolate.
I chose a simple plaid dress and headed to the agreed location. Jessica was already there, waving at me enthusiastically.
Emma, over here.
For a moment, I saw the clumsy little girl again and couldn't help but smile. I walked over and sat down. Jessica couldn't contain her curiosity and asked how I had been all these years and about the sensational news. I smiled and only explained part of it.
It wasn't that I didn't want to talk, I just didn't want to be looked at with pity.
Jessica, being perceptive, noticed my distracted mood and shook her head.
Emma, let's not talk about these unhappy things.
All right.
Jessica showed me the ring on her finger, her eyes sparkling with happiness.
Emma, I took your advice and didn't give up. I finally got the guy, and we're getting married next month. You have to come, Emma. Without your encouragement, I would have given up long ago.
Congratulations, Jessica.
The sparkle in her eyes was something I had once had years ago, but it had stayed in that year. Jessica had a curfew and left early. In the dark, I looked at the shadow cast by the moon, following it step by step, aimlessly. As I walked, I noticed something strange. There were 3 shadows. Realizing something was wrong, I paused and took out my phone.
John, help.
Suddenly, something covered my mouth.
Sarah, what's wrong? Sarah?
There was no response from the other end of the line, and John was getting anxious.
Sarah!
I didn't have time to struggle before I lost consciousness. In a daze, I heard a familiar voice but couldn't remember where I had heard it before. When I woke up again, I was in a dilapidated warehouse, the smell of sewage wafting through rusted pipes, with occasional rats scurrying by. Terrified, I turned pale, staring at the rat and curling up, trembling.
Don't come near me. Is anyone there?
Emma, stop shouting. This is the outskirts. No one will come.
I looked towards the voice and was stunned.
Jessica, you.
Not only was Jessica there, but also former suitors and those who had bullied Emily.
Emma, I'm sorry. I lied to you, but we had no choice. My child can't be without a father, he can't go to prison.
They held tools and even humiliating items. My face changed, and at that moment, I understood that even if the family was broken, it couldn't make up for Emily's pain. Tears fell from the corners of my eyes, and in an instant, I understood. John rushed into the warehouse, slipping on the water on the floor and falling heavily. When he regained his senses, he saw the mess in me, huddled in a corner, trembling. He quickly ran over and hugged me, scaring me into flailing my arms, my mind unclear.
No, no, don't come near me. No, no.
John didn't let go. Instead, he held me tighter, his eyes filled with anger.
Get out!
The lead assistant, seeing the boss angry, didn't dare to breathe.
Yes, boss.
Once everyone had left, John cupped my face, his eyes full of pain.
Sarah, it's me. I'm sorry I'm late.
I held my head in my hands, staring blankly at him. I couldn't stop the tears from flowing, choking on my sobs. The images in my mind wouldn't go away. I shook my head in fear, breathing rapidly.
John, I regret it. I know I was wrong. I'll get a divorce. I'll get a divorce.
All right, we'll get a divorce.
Sob, sob.
Michael returned from a business trip and didn't see me at the airport. His brows furrowed, and he glanced at his inactive phone without saying anything.
Mr. Michael, we've almost acquired all of the Sang family's shares. Emily's family is asking for money again. How much?
5 million.
Give it to them. Tell them if it happens again, it won't be just about money.
The assistant nodded.
To the company or...
Michael opened his phone and looked at our chat history. This time, during his long trip, Sarah hadn't sent a single message. He scrolled up, seeing messages asking when he would return and what he wanted to eat, which he rarely replied to. Feeling suddenly irritated, he put down his phone and rubbed his temples.
Back to the villa.
Yes, Mr. Michael.
Getting out of the car, he didn't see me waiting with a smile at the villa entrance, and he frowned again, saying nothing. The spacious hall had no sign of Sarah, only busy servants.
Where is she?
Madam went back to the Sang family for the vigil. She'll be back after the 7-day mourning period.
Michael secretly breathed a sigh of relief. Sarah still knew to keep the vigil, she was bold. Michael had been back for 5 days, waiting anxiously for any news from me. Unable to sit still any longer, he left work early and went to the Sang family estate, only to find it eerily quiet, as if no one had lived there. Suddenly, a sense of panic gripped his heart. Furious, he stormed back home.
Sir, Madam is back.
She still knows to come back? Let's see how bold she's gotten.
As he walked in, a glaring scene met his eyes, and Michael was enraged.
John!
The angry voice made me quickly hide behind John, clutching his shirt and trembling.
John, I'm scared.
Don't be afraid. I'm here.
John held me protectively, speaking softly, then looked warily at Michael.
Michael, this is the divorce agreement. Sign it, and you'll be free.
Michael glanced at the documents on the coffee table and laughed disdainfully.
Why should I believe you?
His cold eyes stared at her through narrowed slits.
Come here, or face the consequences.
I hesitated, clutching John's shirt tightly, tears welling up in my eyes.
Michael, haven't you always wanted a divorce? I came back just for that. I've already signed it. If you agree, we can finalize it this afternoon. The Civil Affairs office is still open.
A flash of surprise crossed Michael's eyes, and he gritted his teeth.
Sarah, how dare you?
I've been too stubborn. You've seen the Sang family fall apart. Let's just get divorced.
Michael should have been happy to get the divorce agreement so easily, but seeing Sarah so close to John made him extremely agitated. Without a word, he tried to pull her away. John quickly pushed him back.
Michael, didn't you hear? Sarah wants a divorce.
Get lost! This is between her and me.
John didn't back down and stood his ground against Michael. At that moment, Michael's phone rang. He glanced at it, not intending to answer, but the caller was persistent. Annoyed, he picked up, and whatever was said on the other end made him leave in a hurry. I was too scared to speak, clinging to John's shirt and begging him to take me away. When Michael finally finished his business, he remembered me. He called, but I didn't answer, so he instructed his assistant to go to John's house. He was sure I was there. 2 hours later, he arrived at John's house. Michael saw the house draped in mourning cloth, white fabric fluttering in the wind, and took a drag on his cigarette. Had the old man Robert passed away? John came out of the house, holding something in his arms, his eyes red and swollen.
Who did you say passed away?
Hearing Michael's voice, John wanted to lash out but restrained himself, remembering his promise to me.
Sarah is gone.
Who did you say passed away?
Sarah is gone! Are you satisfied now?
Michael sneered.
John, I don't have time for your games. Bring Sarah out.
I had only argued with him about the divorce a few days ago, and now they were saying I was gone. It was all too vague. Just to be with John, what a show. But he didn't believe for a second that Sarah was gone. She had sworn never to leave him unless she grew old. Michael stormed into John's house.
Sarah, come out!
The only response was a chilling silence.
You were the one who wronged Emily first, who betrayed me. What right do you have to throw a tantrum?
Michael's voice was still powerful, even though he was shaking. John just watched him, then ordered the servants to open every door. Every room in the house was spotless, as if no one had ever lived there.
Sarah never set foot in the Yang family, nor did she betray you. She never mistreated Emily. Those things were all orchestrated by Emily herself. Think about it, the Sarah family was incredibly wealthy back then, and James was known for his good temper. If Emily didn't agree, what could he do to her, let alone mistreat her?
Stop lying.
Are you wondering why Emily did such things? Because you said Emily was the most important person to you, and no one could bully her, including Sarah. Otherwise, you'd turn against them.
Do you know why Sarah was so afraid of you that day? Because you, this jerk, had people mistreat her. It was those same people from back then, Michael. You deserve this.
Michael clenched his fists. He had indeed seen those people recently and had said those things. He couldn't believe that the once formidable Emma would willingly be bullied. Why did she leave without a word? Did she have his permission? Michael stumbled out of the Yang family. His phone rang at that moment.
Mr. Michael, we did as you asked. Are you going to prepare to face the consequences?
Michael, what do you mean?
Tell me honestly, did the Sarah family participate in mistreating Emily back then? Speak up.
The person on the other end was startled by Michael's thunderous roar and didn't answer for a long time.
Tell me now, or you'll be the only one going to jail. Otherwise, I'll send your whole family there.
I'll tell you. We were greedy at the time. We had agreed with Emily to put on a show, but we couldn't suppress our desires and mistreated her. You saw James on top of Emily just to comfort her. I'm begging you, Mr. Michael, spare my family. It was my fault back then, Mr. Michael.
Michael didn't respond, hung up the phone, and remained silent. The car soon arrived home. The housekeeper was waiting at the door and quickly opened it when she saw Michael.
Sir, Madam's things are on the coffee table.
Okay.
Michael confirmed it was his and Sarah's wedding ring. She really was willing to let go. Michael tore up the divorce papers, clenched the ring in his hand, and then lit a cigarette. Amid the smoke, he received feedback from his assistant.
They checked the major hospitals and found no record of Sarah being admitted. Start checking the small clinics. And track John's whereabouts.
John went to Weihai.
In Weihai, John lowered his head, holding a small, delicate urn that contained the remains of someone who was once alive and unforgettable. He traced the patterns on it with his fingers.
If I had come back sooner, would Sarah have been okay and agreed to treatment?
During her hospitalization, he visited her whenever he had time. Each time, her condition was worse than the day before. Later, I asked him for a favor. The emergency room loomed before us, casting a chilling shadow. Silence filled the air.
Sarah, we wronged you in the past. But James, he's your brother. Our parents are gone. The only family left is James. Please, save him. He doesn't deserve this fate.
My heart hardened, but I couldn't ignore her plea.
All right, I'll try. But if it doesn't work, there's nothing I can do.
Linda's tears turned to a glimmer of hope.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you.
Linda paced by the emergency room door, her hands wringing in distress. I pulled out my phone, summoning every ounce of courage to make the call. The phone rang endlessly. I tried several times, but there was no answer. Feeling defeated, I returned to Linda to deliver the dreaded news.
No answer. I'm sorry.
Linda's face crumbled, and the emergency room doors opened to announce the inevitable. James hadn't made it. Linda fainted, and I stood there, numb, my limbs cold and lifeless. Next.